My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. Let's talk about individualism versus collectivism first. We'll get to unity consciousness later in this message. People who like individualism may argue that individualism equals freedom and that it has led to a free and prosperous West. They also point out that collectivism means that people's rights and self-expression and individuality get trampled on, and that people get forced into a societal mold. They may say that collectivism means the Soviet Union and that it failed and that it wasn't a good place to live in. On the other hand, people who like collectivism may argue that everything goes to hell if people just individualistically do what they wish, as indeed the individualistic West has been declining of late. Furthermore, it's lonely in a sense if everyone is just individually doing what they want. So, what is better, individualism or collectivism? Well, if half the population prefers one thing and the other half of the population prefers the other thing, then usually both are flawed in a way. If one of these concepts actually was simply correct, then it wouldn't have become such a discussion. Personally, us Pleiadians don't really use the concepts of individualism versus collectivism. Instead we value unity consciousness and freedom. So we have the freedom that on earth comes from individualism, and the group harmony and group prosperity that on earth comes from unity consciousness. Meanwhile we don't have the oppression or stifling of expression that can come from collectivism, because we're pro-freedom. And we don't have the destructive selfishness that can come from individualism, because we have unity consciousness. So, we wouldn't dream of forcing someone to conform, or forcing someone to serve the state, in the way that Earth collectivist societies may do. Yet this works out because our unity consciousness means that people don't do the evil, selfish things that happen in individualistic societies. Of these two things, freedom should be self-explanatory. We have no taxes and barely any laws, and this works for us because we have a relatively high level of consciousness. And our society is good enough that people feel happy to volunteer and contribute. What does unity consciousness really mean, though? Because it's nice to call people brother or sister, or to say things like we are all one, but that's just the surface level. What does it really mean? Well, unity consciousness means that you perceive others as being part of yourself to at least a large extent. It doesn't mean that you are literally unable to distinguish you from others, but it does mean that, for example, if others are suffering, you feel at least to an extent the same kind of motivation to help that you would feel if your shoulder was wounded. Now a unity consciousness person might not feel the urge to help others to quite the same extent as treating a physical wound on their own body, but it's not that different either. To a unity consciousness person, ignoring the suffering of others just literally doesn't make sense, in the same sense that ignoring a wound on your physical body wouldn't make sense. Now, many people will agree with this definition, but the problem is that to many people this is just a rational concept, and rationally understanding this isn't yet unity consciousness. To achieve unity consciousness, you need to embody it. And from the definition it's not immediately obvious how you could go about embodying this. Sure, a high consciousness person can just be, and automatically embody unity consciousness without effort. However, most people receiving this message aren't yet in unity consciousness. So I will suggest a way of behaving that can serve as one possible stepping stone towards unity consciousness. One possible stepping stone towards unity consciousness is, who you are is first determined by your own reincarnating soul. So first, you should listen to your soul. Who you are is second determined by you being an Earth human. So second, you should work to benefit Earth humans. Who you are is third determined by your mind. So third, you should work to benefit yourself. For example, most likely you are more spiritually advanced than the average person on Earth, because you are tuning into these messages. Probably your soul, who you could see as the real you, nudged your mind and orchestrated events so that you woke up, at least partially. So who you are is first determined by your own reincarnating soul, which is why you are most likely more spiritually advanced than the average person on your world. Second, who you are is determined by the fact that you are an Earth human. After all, if you were born in one of the reptilian worlds where reptilians harm each other for their own benefit, most likely you would do the same thing too, except perhaps if your soul nudged you to be higher consciousness than the people around you. But if your soul didn't nudge you one way or the other, it is quite unlikely that your mind would decide to start behaving in a very unreptilian-like way. And also, if you were born in a Pleiadian world, most likely you would be a reasonably typical Pleiadian, except perhaps if your soul strongly nudged you into a non-standard direction. Most Pleiadians are Pleiadian-like, and most Arcturians are Arcturian-like, and most reptilians are reptilian-like, and most Earth humans are Earth human-like.